Thank you for joining us today for Access Queries. Queries are a part of Access that help us to make sense of our records, search particular information, update or delete large numbers of entries, and interact through prompts with the data. This course is intended to be a basic introduction to working with Access queries and creating them and editing them on your own. We're going to be using Access 2016 in class today, but just about everything that we work with should apply for all versions of Access that you would be likely to have. Now, before we get started, one last official thing. The handout that I'm going to be using is available through our website. If you go to mybpl.org, Services, Computers, and Computer Classes, you can find all kinds of resources on our Classes and Materials page. Just scroll down and find the Access Queries link and follow that to the PDF for this class. You can also view our upcoming class schedules, learn about how to register, and learn how to contact us if you have any further questions about that. Now with that, let's get started and start working with Access queries. So we're looking here at an Access 2016 database. This is just a sample database that I created for us to tinker with and to make changes to. There are a couple tables in it that we're going to create and apply queries with, and we'll go over all of that as we go through it. Before we begin, I wanted to talk about the types of queries. Now, there are a lot of different types of queries that you can use. We're going to spend most of our time in class today learning about the different design options that are available when creating the select queries, because there's a lot of detail that's available there. But I do want to mention some of the other ones as well. But getting started, the select queries are the simplest and most common query. It finds and displays the data searched for one or more tables or queries. So we'll start out pulling data from one table, and then we'll start pulling data from more than one table and see how that works. We also have parameter queries. That allows you to have the query change every time it is run by asking a question to the person who is running it, and they enter in the data that you want to search off of or compare to or work with in some way. So we'll see that as we go through as well. Crosstab queries summarize the data in the table format and make it easy to read and compare the information. It's just another way of displaying and working through the data. Now we have a number of queries that actually perform an action for you or a task. We have the make table queries that create a new table from all or part of the data in one or more tables. So this is something that you can use to pull data in from a number of places and generate a separate table. So it's good for backing up or filtering through and finding information from a lot of different sources. We have the append queries, which adds selected records from one table to another table. So if you have information in one table that you need to pull into another one, maybe you're updating your database, maybe you're just changing the fields that you want to have in one table so that you can work with it better for other searches, you can use the append query to do a lot of the work for you. The delete query is very useful. That allows you to remove records from one or more tables. Be very careful about this. As it is automated, it can go through and remove a lot of records quickly, so you want to be cautious there. In the past, I've usually used it for removing duplicate records. When you merge things together or just have sloppy data entry, you might have a lot of duplicates, and so going through and finding exact duplicates is usually a pretty safe thing to do. The update query allows you to update selected information in the table. So if you had, say, a certain category of records that you wanted to change or increase by a certain percentage, maybe you're updating your prices, maybe you are updating the number of years worked for employees after a certain time has passed, you can go through and run an update query and change everything automatically. We'll do an example of this later in class. And then finally, a union query combines fields from two or more tables into queries in one field. That's written directly in the SQL. That's beyond the scope of today's class, but wanted to mention it while we were there. Now, looking here at this table, I wanted to show you how to create a very basic query. We're going to spend most of our time today in the design view. If you're not familiar with the design view in Access, we'll show you what we mean by that. But all the objects have a basic view where you show the information in them, and then in the upper left, you have this list of views available. Right now, you see we're in the data sheet for the table. If we go to the design, you see the structure of the table, how it's divided into different fields, and the kind of data that goes into each of those fields. You can have more controls in the properties of the fields underneath there. That's not the focus of today's class. But working with the queries, we're going to be in the design view most of the time. However, there is a feature available to make a quick and simple query when you are just inside of a table. So those of you who have worked with Access before, you might have done some quick filtering to find information. In my classes, I usually give small examples so that we're not distracted by hundreds of rows and get confused by the volume and the size of the database, but that can sometimes make it a little bit less impressive, especially with things like filtering. So here I have just 5 employees entered in. Applying a filter to find a couple of them, not the most useful thing in the world. We can see all their names right now. But if you imagine you had hundreds of records here, or even 20, 30, 50 of them, it might be a lot faster to be able to filter through and find everybody that's in a certain location or a certain age range, or whatever it might be. So that's what we're doing with the filter option. And you can simply highlight any category, click filter, and choose what options you want to filter either in or out. Right now everything is selected. I can unselect everything and say only show me the Smiths. I say OK, and then I see just the Smiths. Now to remove that filter, I can click on the category again, choose select all, and go back. Easy enough. What if this was a filter that I wanted to be able to check all the time? I wanted to be able to come to my database and just click on this filter and see the results of it right away. Maybe I wanted to filter based on invoices that were due by a certain date. Maybe I wanted to filter based on customers from a certain location that I wanted to be able to find quickly and contact. Whatever it might be, if you have any search that you want to do, any filter like that you want to do, you can apply it, and you can apply it automatically and regularly by creating a query. And we can do that here in the table by going to Advanced and Filter by Form. Now with this, I could simply put in the different categories that I wanted to filter on here. This is the basic way to filter by form, and I could then apply it, toggling it on or off. But I can also, first I'm going to put in my filter here, go to Advanced, and choose Save as Query. Now you might see some other options here. We're not going to get into those just yet. We're going to go to the design view for the queries first. But you see, when I save this as a query, it's going to ask me a name. I will give it a descriptive name. Usually you want to name things with a Q in front of them so that you can identify that they're queries when you're looking at all the objects that are there. And then give it a name that makes sense. In this case, it would be staff named Smith. If you like to do things all one word or with underscores, that's perfectly fine. However you prefer. But we want to give things names that are easy to understand because other people might be working with this as well. When I say OK, you can now see in the All Access objects on the left here, queries listed. And there's one called Staff Name Smith. So I can close this filter by form, and I can just go over here and double click on Staff Name Smith, and it pops up really quickly that information. And the important thing to remember is that when you add new people in, the query will automatically update itself. These things are dynamic and changing. So you create it once and you can use it forever. So that is how you would create a query using the filter by form feature straight through the tables. If you're just trying to create a filter for one individual table that you're working with and you simply want to search based on filtered in or out features that are available there, then that's a great way to do it. It's simple, straightforward, easy to understand. If you want to do more complicated things, you're going to have more luck with the creating queries by design, which we are going to do next. Now let's talk some more about creating queries. We're going to go into, along the ribbon at the top here, the Create option, and we'll see all the different kinds of objects that we can create here in Access. In the Queries category, we have two different tools, creating queries with a wizard or with the design view. Now, most of the time it's going to be a combination of these. The wizard can be a quick way to get started, and the design view will allow you to edit the details of it. I'm going to show you creating something with the wizard first, and then we're going to dig into the design view more thoroughly. So I'm going to open up the query wizard, and it's going to ask me what kind of query do I want to create using this wizard. I could use a simple query wizard. That's what we talked about before, that we're going to spend a lot of time on, just learning to filter our details. A crosstab query wizard displays data in compact spreadsheet-like format. You can see it there. Find duplicates and find unmatched that have no related records. This is something that gets into working with relational databases. It's a little bit more complex than what we're working with right now. So I'm going to work with, first we're going to do the simple query wizard, and then we'll come back here and I'm going to show you how the find duplicates query wizard works. So with the simple query wizard, I say OK to that. And it's asking me where I want to get my data from. Now this is interesting. You can get your data from either tables or queries because the result of a query is very similar to a table. It's a group of fields that have the information filled in, and so you can apply another query to a query if you're so inclined. We're going to work just with the customers here. And it's asking what fields do you want in your query. You can choose from more than one table or query. I'm going to start out with just one here in this demonstration. And then you select the fields that you want. If you simply want everything, you click the little fast forward arrows there and it all jumps over. If you want to move things back, you can press that. And if you want to move them individually, you can select the individual fields and move them over. If you're doing this for report or display purposes, you might want to skip things like the automatically generated IDs that go in or other things that aren't relevant. But for simplicity's sake, you might want to have, instead of just moving them all individually, you might want to have everything so you have all the records to work with there. Again, we can always change this later. Notice, by the way, that you can jump to finish really fast if you know the rest of the fields and how it's all going to play out. But in this example, I'm going to go through everything for us together. So I'm then going to click Next. It's asking, do you want to show detail or summary query? So in the summary options, you can go through and choose what is it that you want to show. Do you want to have it just average some of the totals together? These are things that work better with numbers than with names. It's not really appropriate for the records that we're going through here, so I'm going to cancel that. We're going to go back to detail. And I'm going to click Next. Then you would again put in a title for it. I will put in here the Q at the start. And I'm going to go into this, and again, say customers from Bloomingdale. Now, one thing to note here, we have not applied any of the filtering tools that we would use in our query yet. We are just creating something basic here, creating the source for the data for us and how we're going to display it. Once we've done that, then we are going to be able to edit this using the design view and make the changes we want. So you see they have the choice here. Do you want to open the query to view the information, which would just show you everything that you've pulled from the table or tables or queries? Or do you want to modify the query design, go right into making your changes? I'm going to go with modify the design so that we can actually make a change that we can see the result of. So I click that and I click Finish, and that's going to take us to the design wizard. And so this is, sorry, the design view, I should say. This is what we're going to see with a lot of what we're going to be doing with the queries for the rest of the class. Now you can see the table that we have pulled in here, the customers table, and this has the different fields that are available in it. And you can see our data that is showing in the results. And right now we have just the field names across the top here and the table that they all come from. You see it's all from the table customers, and you see all the fields listed that are listed right there. If you wanted to, you could remove these. If, say, the age of the customer wasn't relevant, we could cut that out. And now that will no longer display. The data has not been removed from the customer's table. It's just not going to be displayed in the query if that's not something that we need. This is also where we would choose how we sort these. So if we wanted to sort them by last name, we can do it either ascending, that's A to Z, or descending, Z to A. If we wanted to do it by status, highest number at the top, going on down, I'll do that. In addition to cutting the field out of this, you see we have the check mark for show or not show. You might wonder, why would you have data in here that you choose not to show? Sometimes you will have multiple data fields that are used to combine and give you a result of other information that you would want to have in your query, but you don't want to have the source data visible. Or you might just not care to have the ID code visible here, so I could uncheck that and not have it show up in my result, but you still might want to have it for connecting to other tables. Finally, let's put in a criteria For the zip code, let's put in 60108. And that will make this customers from Bloomingdale. Now you notice the OR underneath there? So this is the example that we had in the filtering by form, where you could have multiple items checked in the form. So you could have another item under here. So if I wanted to also include people from Glendale Heights or Roselle or whatever I wanted, I could put in another zip code underneath there and have multiple ones grabbed. But we named this customers from Bloomingdale, so we'll stick with that. Once we're done with all this, I'm going to click the little save button up in the corner here. This is something I should take a moment to talk about. If you haven't worked with Access very much, when you're entering in data, it is automatically recorded and saved as you go. But if you make any design changes to the structure, you edit how the tables are set up, you create a form or a report, you edit those forms or reports, or you create and edit queries, it's worthwhile to save them after you make the changes. If I had gone to run this, it would normally ask me if I wanted to save this before I closed it out. So I'm going to click Save here. And then when I run this, we should see ordered from highest number of status to lowest, only showing people from Bloomingdale zip code, all of our customers listed. So I click Run, and we see 3311, all 60108, all the customers. And if I were to show the actual customers table, you see we have several more here, and they're from different zip codes. So that is a query. And that is how we use the basic wizard to set up our structure, and then we go into the design mode to edit that and change it. We're going to do some more in the design mode and making some more complicated things, but before we go on, I do want to show you one more thing using the wizard. I'm going to go back to Create. I will again go into the Query Wizard, and I wanted to show you the Find Duplicates Query Wizard. I mentioned that earlier in class when I was talking about the different options that were available, and this can be a good one. So I'm going to select this and say OK. It's asking me what source I want to find the duplicates in. We want to find them in tables. You notice here at the bottom you can choose tables, queries, or both. Now I just want to find them in tables, so I'm going through there, and I say next. I want table customers, I should have said. Next. And now it's asking me what fields might contain duplicate information. This is important to discern the difference between this and what we did before, because for your search, these should only be the fields that contain identical information. So if you're looking for duplicate records, maybe you wouldn't want to, of course, just take first names, because you might have multiple people with the same first name, and you might want to have first name, last name, and something else that would be identifying for them, but you don't want to have the automatically generated primary keys or IDs that go with these, because every time somebody is entered in, they're automatically given one of these ID numbers, and even if you enter the same person in twice in a row, they would have different ID numbers. We want to make sure not to have that. You also might want to skip something that was more adjustable or easy to make mistakes with, like say the status. So I could say we want to have the same first name, last name, zip, and age. That's probably a duplicate person. If you had phone number records, that would be a good one to put in as well. Now I will go on to the next step here. It's asking what other information might you want to show, even if it is not something that you are comparing to be identical. So these can be other parts of the field, but they don't have to be identical. And I'm going to pull everything in here so that I can see that we have multiple records that are the same. I go to next. I'm just going to leave it as this name, Find Duplicates for Customers. That's very descriptive. I could put the Q in front of it if I were so inclined. And then we're going to view the results. And when I click this, it shows me the results. I have two records. I've got Joe made up ID number 7 and Joe made up ID number 2. And again, I want to show you if I were to go in here and go to the customers and say, oh, that's Jane made up. They're twins, they're the same age, but it should be like that. And then when I go into Find Duplicates for Customers, suddenly there's nothing, because this is dynamic and it changes as we go. But if I go back into Customers and change this back to Joe, and then Find Duplicates for Customers, whoops, I gotta close that out. And there we go. And so I could see that, and if I realize, oh, I don't want that, I could select this one and choose to delete it. I'm about to delete one record. Yes, I want to delete that. Okay. So that is how we can use the query wizard to search for duplicates. We can get more advanced with this. We can automate this process more, but I just wanted to introduce you to it at this point. Now we're going to take a moment and we're going to go back to the query design and learn more about the things we can change there. Let's go back into the design mode and take a look at some of the different criteria operations we can use. So I'm going to go into the customers from Bloomingdale query. We see our current results here, and we'll go into the design mode. Now, at this time, we only have two things happening in this design mode. We've changed the order in them by sorting based on customer status, and we have put in a zip code qualification here where they're only from Bloomingdale. Let's make some changes. First off, I want to use the age field. I changed my mind on that. I want to add that in. The way we would do this is we click the field that we want and we just drag it over to here. So now we can use age as part of our query. And we can put in a criteria. We could put in a specific age, or we could just put in a criteria of, say, greater than 18. I'm also going to put in another zip code here to get a few more people in our results. So we have Bloomingdale or Glendale Heights. Close enough. Now let's run this query. And we see the results, and you see we lost one of the Bloomingdale people because they did not meet the age requirement, but we added somebody from Glendale Heights. Now let's go back into the design view here, and let's make it a little bit more complicated. I'm going to put in and less than 55. And pretend I'm an advertiser and this is my target audience. So now I've got two levels in here, and it should remove one of our customers who was listed as 84. So when I click run there, now we're down to just 3, because it took out one of the people that was available. So you see we can add multiple things to these, and we can keep on going with that. Other criteria that you can put in, instead of having specific zip codes listed, you could say show people who are not from Glendale Heights. So the less than and greater than right next to each other means not them, anybody but them. And when I run that, we see only the Bloomingdale ones. I'll get rid of that. If you had empty records in places, you could put is not null to make sure that you only brought up people that had status listed, or you could put is null if you're trying to find ones that were specifically blank. That doesn't apply in this database. We don't have anything in those tables that matches those, but that is an option that's available to you. In addition to the greater than, you can do greater than and equal to. So you'd get any bookends that you might have, so if somebody happened to be exactly 18. And you can also do less than or equal to. So those are various criteria that you can add here. Using those and adding in multiple different categories, you can make your filters very specific and you can find exactly what you're looking for. You can also arrange the tables to look and work how you want by putting things in with that, such as the descending sorts. We could add secondary sorts in here. If we had a lot of people, we could sort, say, first by last name, then by first name, and so on. A couple other things I want to show you with the design of the queries. One, you can have multiple tables within the query. To do that, at any time, you can right-click in the background and choose Show Table, and you can choose from Tables, Queries, or Both, just like when we originally created. And you can choose to add another table, or multiple tables here. And you see I can add a number of them, and you can keep going through as many of these as you'd like. There are times when this is appropriate. If you're working with relational databases where there are connections between the tables, and the filters would apply to pulling out information from both places, this can be very helpful. In a lot of situations, though, you're going to get strange results when you throw this in because it's going to be grabbing things from both tables and the overlays are going to look odd. You're going to get a lot of duplicates. So I would be cautious about doing this when it's not absolutely necessary or not appropriate for the information. But be aware that you can always do that, and you can always go back and remove them as well by right-clicking on the table and removing it there. So we can go through that. Now, I do want to show you how to create calculated fields. This is an important next step with the queries, and it's the last thing that I want to take some time with you and go over. So if I go to a query that I created for this purpose, so this is the idea of an invoice query. So what we're doing here is we are going to my table items that I created, and it is pulling the information of the item name, price, shipping cost, and then it's generating a total cost here. If I go into the design view, we can see how this works. So started this out the same way we have done all of these before. We pulled in the table that we wanted to work with and the basic fields. It gets interesting with this last one here. Instead of taking an existing field and displaying it here, I created this on my own. So I'm going to delete it and start from scratch. When creating a calculated field, instead of grabbing it and dragging it down, you type in the name that you want to display with the field. So I called it total before, I'll call it total cost, or I'll just call it cost this time, a colon, and then you type the expression that you want. The expression is typically a mathematical expression using existing fields or other calculated fields that you have. So I would put in brackets and I would say price. Notice I can simply type in price in the brackets because I only have one table with that item. If we had multiple tables with multiple tables that had records with the same name in them, I would have to specify which table, and so I would have to type something like this. I would have to type table items, bracket, period, bracket, price. I can do that now, but it's a little bit confusing and a little bit wordy, and it's not necessary because we just have the one table. But if we had multiple tables or queries involved in this, you might need to add on to that. So I'm going to clear that out just so we can see a little easier. And I'll type price. Whoops, got to remember the brackets. And then I'll type plus, and then again in brackets, shipping. So I've now created a calculated field. And now when I run this, we can see the result, that it has added together those items. I'd encourage you to explore what you can do with these. If you have any questions about how to create the calculated fields, they have a builder that allows you to put together different expressions, and you can go through and pull in different built-in functions that are available. You can learn constants that you can use. You can see all of the items that are available here to drag and drop. So this can be a really useful tool in creating more complicated expressions as you go. But if you're starting out, start with some basic ones, get the hang of building those. Once you have done that, you can apply the same criteria or filters for these that you would with anything else. So if you only wanted to see items that cost under a certain amount, whatever you wanted to do there. You can make this a little bit more complicated as well by adding more things to it. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this was a helpful introduction to the basics of working with queries. If you're interested in more lessons about this or any other topic related to Access, be happy to include that. Just let us know. One we're considering is relational databases, so if that's something you'd like to see, please give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy to add that to our list of available classes. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.